In this video, I will present 5 tools or strategies that will improve your applications for different types of art grants, funding, and artistic or practice-based research positions. This presentation focuses on musical activities, but it is applicable to many other art forms too. Hi, my name is Rebecka. I have been both an applicant myself over many years, and I have been evaluating applications written by others in many different contexts. This presentation does not focus on what singular elements you should or should not include, such as context, method, or references, since they depend on what kind of grant you are applying for. Depending on where you are applying, and even where you are geographically, you may want to modify these tools for your specific purposes. However, I genuinely believe that these tools have general applicability whenever attempting to make a musical project accessible to others in text. I have also made a PDF that walks you through these 5 tools in a condensed form, which you will get access to for free from the link down below. Before we get started, I'm a bit ambivalent to this topic myself. The reason for this is that there could be other life solutions too than putting lots and lots of time into writing perfect applications for the rest of your life. On a general level, other interesting questions are how wealth is distributed in society and what the possibilities are for professional artists to have an influence and active exchange of thoughts with the world around them. I recommend thinking creatively and ambitiously about the possibilities. On the other hand, these tools of reflection are relevant to making your music accessible to others by writing in general, whether it is an application, an essay, an update on social media, or a concert program. It can be a gratifying process to find ways of giving others access to your choices and the context around your work. And I don't mean attention merely in terms of publicity, but having an active exchange of thought with the society around you, and also reaching out to new groups of people. Your art does not arise from an isolated space of self-expression anyway, but from your experiences in the world, a craft that existed already before you did, an education that you may have, certain norms and expectations about how to do things, perhaps your critique of some of these norms. All of this is part of your art too. And a continuous exchange of ideas is relevant for developing your thinking, your ability to respond to certain things around you, and to respond to artistic traditions that you are part of. Now, let's dive into these 5 application tools. And if you watch until the end of the video, there will be a bonus tool that concerns the writing process in general and how to get started. Number 1. Activating a language that concerns your art or music. Writing about music has a slightly bad reputation among some musicians themselves. It seems difficult. It could also seem inauthentic. Words cannot really capture what you are doing. The activities cannot be directly translated into words. A text seems so flat in comparison to the many dimensions within an artistic activity. You can only present one sentence at the time, leading to the next sentence. A conventional text also seems to be much more conclusive than a complex musical exploration. First, we must completely change these views about what writing is. Writing about art. Let us begin with crossing out the about. If you think that the purpose of the text is to translate your art into words or explain it, of course the writing feels off, of course it is boring, and of course it is doomed to fail. You are not writing about art. Your writing should be thought of as a piece of art itself. When you are writing, you are activating a language around a topic. You are creating a dialogue with the topic. Yet the writing itself is another activity than practicing art. Writing may reveal new dimensions and give your artistic activity certain reflective depth. On many occasions, it also affects your way of doing art further. It is really a circular process where art and reflection affect each other. Activating a language or vocabulary also means that you are not only focusing on one specific application and writing about your art from scratch each time. You circulate certain ideas and formulations about what you are doing. You take some ideas from one project to the next one, both in your art and your writing. Over time, you create a catalog of text phrases, ideas, descriptions, and text fragments that can be put together in endless different ways. They are not an actual list or catalog, and they are not static either. But they are your way of thinking around a topic, your way of being active in language regarding a topic. You may present similar thoughts in interviews, at seminars, on concert programs, etc. To be successful, this writing activity needs to be ongoing, An application is only one exposition of it, one step along the way. Not all your eggs should be put in one basket anyway, but when you repeatedly activate a language around your activities, you become a good writer over time. Number 2. The context is found on the outside and the inside. Many artists struggle with writing about context. I think context is the most important thing when you apply for the possibility of doing an artistic project, and something about it should even be said among the first sentences, whatever project you are describing. It gives the reader an answer as to the why, and makes your project comprehensible. But we must get a more nuanced understanding of what context is. An obvious, but slightly one-dimensional way of understanding context is what others have done within your field before in the same area. I think this is the least important part of context. What does it even really mean as such? Context becomes interesting in the light of what your project responds to and builds further on. In this particular sense, what others have done in your field is relevant, and it shows that you are aware of the world around you. What you agree with about the norms of your artistic practice, what you disagree with, what feels familiar or unfamiliar about your artistic field. What are the historical backgrounds of your artistic activities? If you are a folk musician, for example, how is folk music different from the classical music tradition that is work-centered? The work-centered tradition focuses on a musical work with a beginning and an end and a sound structure between the beginning and the end, and a certain understanding of the role of the musician and the listening audience. What consequences does the work-centered view have for the general status of your artistic practice as a folk musician? And how do these consequences affect your experience about being a musician? What research is lacking in your field? What experiences have not yet been articulated? What is unhealthy about your field? How would you like to change things? What things need to be questioned, meaning words or activities that have a certain cultural background but are treated as a natural state of things? You may also find relevant comparisons in other art forms, someone having done something elsewhere with completely different tools, but in a similar way or for similar reasons. Concepts from philosophy, ideas that throw a certain light on your activities, can be useful too. A quite useful book for this particular purpose is They Say, I Say by Kathy Birkenstein and Gerald Graff. This one. It concerns placing your activity within a context and making your purposes understandable through that context. They say refers to the context. I say refers to your position in relation to the context. And as said, the context should be understood in the non-boring sense. Now, if you look at this list of context descriptions, some of them relate to the external world and what others say or what they are doing, while some of them relate to your inward experience. You can find some of the context of what you are doing within yourself, inside your experience, your personal background, your education, your experience of your education, etc. Context does not only point in the outward direction, but it also points in the inward direction. This is because your experience is, in a way, not private. It is not personal. This brings us to the next tool, which is to understand that you are not special. When you write any application, accept this as the paradigm. On a practical level, this means that even though you might be used to promotional language when promoting a concert or other event, such as you being one of the most outstanding musicians of our time, or a text that mentions your album releases, reviews, and possible prizes that you have won, this is not particularly interesting for the content of your application when you describe your artistic project. This information belongs to your CV or bio. Also, usually you attach some sample files or links to the application to give an impression of your previous work. But once it is established that you are active in your field, that you work professionally with music, it does not necessarily make your application stronger to refer to all your accomplishments. It could even be tiresome to read and take up unnecessary space. Depending on what you are applying for, it could sometimes even show a lack of reflection. I will explain why in a second. Previous activities could, however, be referred to when they are relevant for the content of your future project, regarding which expressions you are planning to build on further. What is relevant is what you can contribute with. It is not likely that a reader of your application is going to think, "Whoa, this is a really outstanding and special individual, and I really think they are entitled to this financial support." Sometimes mentioning your previous experiments that have failed could be a better approach to giving the reader access to your specific intentions. And that is more interesting to read about. Here is a paradox. Acknowledging that you are not special as such will make your private experience relevant to others. This is why introspection is so important. Introspection, looking within, scanning your experiences in an honest way, including the most negative experiences, things that you are not proud of, realizing how you have let yourself be misled by societal ideas. To engage in this humbling process, you need to become better friends with yourself. I have never heard anyone talk about this aspect in the context of writing applications, yet I think it is crucial in learning how to reflect your own art. Here is why. Whatever your artistic field is, you may have gradually adapted to certain ways of working that are accepted by a community around you. Working in specific ways may give you, to some extent, a certain prestige too. What is often forgotten is the willingness to have something at stake, a quality of risk-taking that is perhaps necessary for art to develop. How do you approach this kind of humble space? This solution is less technical and more existential. Instead of attempting to create art that gives you validation, you need to learn how to validate yourself and to gravitate towards a space where you are less reliant on the opinions and even support of others. And it may require a certain critical observation of the ideals that you have adopted. Let us have a look at an example. What if you are a guitar player or a singer? You may have enjoyed the activity in your teenage years, but you may also have had certain ideas about the social status of this activity. You dreamed about one day standing on the stage and playing the electric guitar, and then finally everyone would admire you, all the other guys would envy you, and all the women would want to be with you. Or you wanted to be a singer and you thought that one day you are going to stand on the stage and sing so beautifully, using your voice in certain ways with certain aesthetics, and you will be an angel and admired by everyone. I am not at all saying that these are the sole reasons someone becomes a musician, only that we do have certain cultural ideas that constitute the status of musicianship, and certain aesthetic ideals of artistic expressions. These examples are very gendered, by the way, and I hope these situations change over time. Perhaps they already have. A teenager does not usually think that much about how certain ideals within a discipline have come to exist in society, why something is admired, etc. And if they do choose a certain path, they will often first want to learn the practice of that field and gain some level of validity within their own practice. Many do not raise too many questions about their chosen path. This might be especially typical of musicians, since it takes such a long time to learn that instrument, all the fine muscle movements, etc. But there is a danger that this path leads to art becoming a sport, something you are good at. This concerns the way musicianship is branded too. Certain ideals circulate in society, in commercial visual languages too. Concert pianists have told me that even though they are sometimes presented with a dramatic bodily expression on the poster, they do not actually need to look emotional or intense to play the music in a nuanced and expressive way. Looking dramatic does not add anything to the music. It is part of a constructed idea of musicianship. The good news is that when you do start to deconstruct the beauty ideals of musicianship, the beauty ideals of the art too, not necessarily physical beauty, but certain aesthetics, when you start to put words on these processes, the false cultural ego, the matrix that you occupy, you will not stand alone in that process. You will likely find support. You may come to realize that a lot of people have the exact same experience and that they even value the blunt honesty that is an outcome of your introspection. A lot of people feel what you feel, the same reluctancy towards certain elements, perhaps certain pretentiousness. If you do manage to put these processes into words in a relatable way, then you may hit the jackpot with your applications. Especially if you are capable of writing about things in a general way that relate your experience to the society around you, perhaps even to music history, and raise questions about practice. And you don't have to be concluding in your writing. This is often the type of application that stands out. I want to mention an example of what a well-formulated topic with a well-formulated context could be. This is an idea of a friend of mine, so I will not take credit for it. The concept is called a failed rock concert. A rock concert where everything goes wrong. The fog machine doesn't work. It is supposed to generate mystical, dramatic, scenic effects, but instead it sends out small pink-colored puffs of smoke. The instrument does not make a cool sound either, but an unexpected strange sound, etc. The ego of the guitar hero is killed in a way. While this description has plenty of humor in it and refers to a particular event, as a concept this could be an exploration of musicianship that performs in a non-manifesting way, that negates the musical hero and the expectations attached to the musical hero. Maybe such a project could also have relevance for a critique of the symphonic tradition, where the conductor or solo musician, or sometimes the composer, carry such superhero status, or at least the status of star musicianship. When something becomes a sport rather than a reflection, presenting something that sounds impressive rather than being vulnerable and risk-taking in art, being part of the matrix rather than critically penetrating the matrix, is often difficult to pinpoint. It is subtle. It might be easier to succeed musically and to sound impressive within a safe and established way of doing things, yet this impressiveness also carries some type of a lie. This dichotomy is perhaps always present in music and other art forms. The surface of music is a liar. It is what plays along with existing representations or interpretations of music. If you are able to put words on this dichotomy and your attempt to navigate it, standing in the middle of this matrix, yet being willing to critically explore it, then you have likely written a successful application. What I'm suggesting is not to first kill your ego and then you will do great art. Rather, embrace your ego injuries and become aware of the ideals of society that may have served a compensatory function for you. You could journal about things. Writing as much as possible is a great way of processing. It will help you gravitate towards your naked experience. It will make you more humble. In fact, you should dwell much more, be much more present in your misery. We are not taught how to do that. We numb these experiences, the dissonance within us. We choose immediate gratification to distract ourselves. But in this way we never learn how to sit with the dissonance and the lessons about society that lie deep within our personal experience. The experience is not private. So, this is about deconstructing a false cultural ego. The next tool is more technical. It concerns writing and it is called creating sandwiches. We used this expression when I was teaching academic writing to university students for several years, so this is not my own concept. It might have been hamburgers, but both sandwiches and hamburgers work just fine. This is about how to present a quote or phrase from someone else, creating a context around the quote and not just presenting the quote as such. The delicious stuff in the middle of the sandwich is the quote. This is what good research is about, and it shows a nuanced understanding of what you are referring to. This tool is perhaps more relevant in research applications than other funding applications. If you are bringing in a philosophical idea or a quote from someone who said something that supports your perspective, say something about the background of that quote. What tradition does this thought belong to? How does your project relate to it? How has this idea been criticized? Express your agreement and disagreement with the quote. This is something that surprises many people, and it took me some time to learn. You do not need to sound certain to validate your way of quoting. You can express your doubt and bring your doubt into the text. It does not make the text weaker. You could say that this idea resonates well with some perspective in your project, but on the other hand it does not seem to solve this or that issue. Bringing in doubt in the text, commenting on what others have said, yet not concluding, visiting ideas and revealing possible interpretations of them, is often a sign of a mature thought process. It makes your writing come across as balanced, and it makes it interesting. Number 5. Be careful of words such as freedom. Be careful of expressions such as personal freedom. It could seem like you are referring to the opposition strict rules versus freedom. Your personal freedom as such is not interesting to others, and this dichotomy sounds a little bit lazy, too. It sounds like there are some bad guys and a bad tradition that wants you to follow the rules while you want to break out from it and do things freely in your self-defined way. Instead, you could write about personal agency and freedom in this particular sense. Or you will perhaps find other words that are even better. If you do want to criticize power hierarchies that are tied to certain institutions or a certain field, then you could say that the problem is not the tradition as such, but those who claim to conserve tradition, but actually only try to conserve their position of power because it benefits them. Or that certain power hierarchies are embedded in the tradition, and that someone uses tradition as an alibi to maintain power. Or you could say that certain things about a tradition have been discussed too little, and we need to re-evaluate a certain practice from today's perspective. All these ways avoid the opposition, tradition versus personal freedom. A bonus tool, patching as a writing method. Do not try to write a linear text from the beginning to the end. Write fragments around a topic. Bring in quotes from what others have said. Create sandwiches around the quotes. And once you already have text material in front of you, then magic starts to happen. The text fragments themselves start to speak back to you, and they instruct you about how they should be placed together. This is the moment when the actual writing happens. The first step was only to gather some possible text materials to your application writing studio, materials that you may or may not include in the final text. I find the methods of writing an application or an academic article very similar to musical composition. Neither one should be mystified, yet both have some kind of magic. So, these were some tools based on my experiences. I am sure there are lots of other valid approaches to writing a good application too, and other valid understandings of what art should be. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked the content, please consider subscribing to my channel.